Well, hello there. I am here today to talk to you about a book that I stumbled across that was way better than I ever expected it to be. So, the book is, I don't know if you can see that, it is The Swordbearer by Glen Cook with his excellent, I mean, it's not his excellent, but excellent 80s weird fantasy art. This is a great book. I'm going to tell you that right up front. But what was I got to say a few things about that first. Number one, I'm a huge Glen Cook fan. It's unsurprising that I would be very into a Glen Cook book. I am rapidly running out of books that I haven't read of his, and so this was a special treat for me. Okay, so number one, this was a freestanding novel, standalone, not part of a series, not part of a mythos he had built, just totally freestanding. Number two, really short for a Glen Cook book. It is 200 and I want to say 82 pages. 280 281 pages. 281 pages long. Now, most authors, when granted 281 pages, will give you a story that has a recognizable structure to it. You'll know who the good guys and the bad guys are, so you can have these nice plot arcs and not get too fuddled up with Malazan Books of the Fallen style, ultra deep, world building and shades of gray and all of that. But Glen Cook was a madman, and I hope he still is. So, what do we have? Well, let's start from the beginning. The book, when I started reading it, I was prepared to be disappointed. Because nobody bats 1,000, right? Somewhere, Glen had to write something that was a little cliched, a little on the nose, a little trope heavy. So we start this book, and we have the son of a knight who has a castle on the border of this small kingdom that's the first line of defense for the west of these kingdoms. And there's a big spooky evil empire from the east that's being fueled by this new emperor who has dug up ancient magics, and he's using these ancient magics to sweep the lands and cause untold destruction as he goes across the lands. You can't get much more standard fantasy, than that. The boy can't train like his brothers to be a knight because he had a light case of polio, which means that, his leg drags and he doesn't have the speed for that. He's best friends with his sister, who is got a complicated personality. His father's very involved with the politics of this. And very importantly, the way magic works in this world is very light touch because there are very powerful magical items, and making them is very hard, but anyone with enough force of will can use them. So it's a little light touch on how magic works. The most important magical item of myth and legend and repeated legend is this sword. It's a lost sword that when someone becomes the sword bearer of the title, and they become the world's greatest swordsman, and they're able to cut through magics, and these people are either great heroes or great villains, and the tales always end tragically, and there's this a lot of confusion about what exactly happens because the sword is so old, it's, tens of thousands of years old, and all of that. Okay. I think it's actually 10,000 years old. This sounds like a very trope-filled story. I can already tell you the story. The boy, evil empire shows up, boy finds sword, boy's sword's chosen one, he gets separated from his sister, He has to fight against the Empire. There's eventually a confrontation with the Emperor. His sister either needs to be saved or has fallen to the dark side, one of the two, and that's a fateful either pentultimate or ultimate confrontation. It's a very trope story, right? You can see it immediately. Only the first two events happen. Not a spoiler to tell you that the evil empire that's knocking on the front door knocks the front door over and destroys the little kingdom, right? That's what sends us off on our adventure. And it's not a surprise to tell you that the main character becomes the Swordbearer for which he is on the cover. The story does absolutely nothing else expected after that. We have, let me see. I think I first was floored around 100 pages in when what I thought would have been an end confrontation happened. 100 pages in. Wasn't expecting that. Then we have a different, and I'm like, okay. So the end, that confrontation happens about 100 pages in, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got the wrong story. I didn't give Glen enough credit. This is the trajectory that we're going on. He wanted us to know about this and the character to experience this in order for that to happen. So he could go and do X, Y, and Z actions, and it all makes sense. It all flows. And that's how it goes for a little bit. And then it turns again. Maybe about 150 pages in. And then I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, I'm getting new information because the world building's very deep here. Don't let 281 pages prevent you from having, you know, at least 10,000 years of backstory. Heaven forbid. So I get there, and at 150 pages, we change story again. Now we're in a different story, and I'm like, oh, okay, wait. I think I understand where the story's going now. And I was wrong again. At about 200 pages in. And at that point, I just quit trying to guess. I was just going for the ride. I think I would have been tricked at least 3 more times if I was trying to guess at that point. But I had learned my lesson. It is a ride. It zips around. It is fantastic. Something I want to talk about, though, is there's a lot of interesting corollaries in this book to other Glen Cook series, right? Or stories. So, number one, it is, I mean, we should say right off the bat, it is dark, low fantasy. Maybe not low fantasy, but it's dark fantasy, that's for certain. It is a brutal and grueling world that the stories fit right alongside the Dread Empire or Black Company or Instrumentalities of the Night. No question. But we also have some other interesting things. We have the fascination with the Roman Empire, because the West, in this case, is like a Rome that only 90% fell. You have a lot of extra kingdoms around, and this little tiny core of empire that wants to build things back up again. We have... we see that in Chronicles of a Dread Empire, his fascination with the fall of Rome and the result of that. You also see it in a different way in Instrumentalities of the Night. We obviously have Evil Wizard. We have Evil Wizard Empire, which that's true of the Black Company. That's true of Instrumentalities of the Night. That's true of Dark War. That's true of, I mean, just everything, right? He just loves that. That's his bread and butter. You have a character coming, something unique here. Something unique here is I don't think we have any others where we have a literal youth protagonist who comes into his own. And I want to talk about that for a second, because he does it way better than I would have expected. In 281 pages, we have a character go from resentful and powerless to overwhelmed with power, like doesn't know how to handle it, doesn't know the responsibilities, doesn't know what to do with it. A heady with power, he thinks he's going to make changes, he thinks he can do things. Overwhelmed again by what he can and can't do, rebelling, trying to take control, learning how to handle things. I mean, so many character beats for such a short novel. And by the end, we get to a world weary veteran, and it's believable. That's what's crazy to me. He is jaded and cynical, and he earned it. He actually earned becoming jaded and cynical in 280 pages. Just blows my mind. And the way he gets there, I mean, it's a fantasy novel, so yes, some things are contrived, but they all feel rooted in the story, right? It's things can be contrived without being surprising. Obviously, this story also likes to use a vast historical scale in order to do its world building. Now, Glen likes doing this. He's done it, I think, every series I've read of his to some extent or another. And he does it really interestingly. It's not like Malazan as a good counter example. Malazan has a very detailed, weighty history that affects everything that's going on in the future or in the present of the book. Glen is very much the same way, but in Malazan, we learn all that history and we are expected to process it, understand it, see how it goes forward. Glen focuses, and in this book, he really uses it heavily, this notion of, yes, history is how we got here, and we don't really have many of the details, which is tricky because you need to convince me that you actually have a self-consistent, logical, flowing history that makes the world make sense and also not tell me it. I think he does a pretty good job here. He shows his hand a little bit at the end with like, no, see, I did, this wasn't just totally nonsense. Like I thought these bits through, which were cool to see, but I think not necessary. I was willing to, at that point, I felt like I had been shown enough to trust that the rest of it worked. Although it had some nifty ideas there. Because everything with Glen comes down to, of course, some sorcerer in the past who's either dead or asleep or something or another, still having vast effects on the present, which really, I think, speaks to an interesting historical mindset. But that's a video for another time. Historical mindsets in relation to fantasy. That's an interesting idea. The point is that this historical thinking, this magic trick he did here, created a very rich world with very little detail very quickly. And actually didn't just, sometimes if you read Lord of the Rings, right, a lot of that history's there. It was clearly thought out. It was explained to you when you didn't really need it. And it also felt like set dressing a lot of times. It didn't matter to what you were doing. And here, the detail mattered. It really mattered consistently, which was, I think, a great use of conservation of detail. The only other time I can think of Glenn Cook focusing on a young one who gets older, gets power, gets older, grows up, and inevitably becomes cynical because this is, you know, this is a dark fantasy author, is Dark War, which was very different and yet had some similarities in there. In terms of the rest of the book, the prose, the characterization, all of that, I think it's, standard quality of his. So the prose is often to the point. It can be very evocative. The characterization is great. The, everyone's conflicted. Everyone is some weird gray. I think I can only think of a handful in like 50 books. I can only think of a handful of not gray characters, and they're generally comically evil. Like the Dominator from the Black Company. He's there as a counterpoint to see, you know, less shades of lesser evil. You needed something that was comically black. We play with that in this series or in this book, but we don't, but not with the character, not with one of our main characters. We play with that in terms of myth making and world building. Okay, so this was rambly and a little all over the place because that I have just so many thoughts about this book, and I kept talking, and I would be explaining a point and realizing that I can't even explain it to you without spoiling something that I thought was nifty. And there's a lot of nifty things in this book. I therefore cut all that out of the video because I don't want to do that to you. It would rob you of the experience. And hopefully, just saying that there are so many of these things will tantalize you into tracking down this book somewhere. I don't know if it's still in print. I got a very old used copy from a used book sale. And because if I see anything that I don't own of his yet, I think I'm down to like 4 or 5 books. I gotta buy it, whatever the price. In this case, the price was $1, so, worked out for me. But anyway, that's all I have now. We've wrapped up the Summer of Gaming videos. That took a long time because life is busy. And now, after this video, we're going to eventually get back to Sekiro. That's going to be weird to play after like a month and a half and be in the back half of the game where, they expect me to be good or something. But that's a problem for later. I will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.